Welcome to Dead Man Talking. Tonight's story is a special edition, as there was such a great response yesterday to the first chapter of this story. I've decided that tonight's show will have part 2 and part 3, or rather chapter 2 and chapter 3 in one. I hope you guys enjoy this also. I'm sure you will. Please do let me know down below in the comments. As ever, guys, please do like and share. Without further ado, let's get into tonight's story, entitled Shards of the Moon, chapter 2 and 3. Let's get straight into that. It wasn't so much unconsciousness as her mind simply shutting off because of everything that was going on. She even dreamed a pleasant dream of something that happened long ago, a conversation with her mother that she was fond of, but unfortunately that was indeed long ago. Her dream took a dark turn, the day quickly sinking into night, and her friends and neighbours all transforming before her eyes into hideous malformations of themselves, coming for her, calling her to join them. Madison awoke with a start and a gasp from the sudden nightmare. Suddenly, hyper-aware of everything around her as a shot of adrenaline started coursing through her veins. She was in bed, covered by a heavy blanket, in a room not familiar to her. It was a large room, with hanging lights long since broken, and a few windows open to bright morning sunlight. There was a broken chalkboard on the far side of the room, and the bed itself was little more than a mattress piled atop the broken tile floor. A campus setup. She slid out from beneath the covers, wondering what exactly was happening now. If she was still dreaming or awake, nothing fit with what was happening last night. Even though last night could have been a dream as well, her nose caught a whiff of her shirt sleeve, smelling the garbage of the dumpster. It was no dream. Madison quickly climbed to her feet, but her balance betrayed her as she nearly stumbled over. Her head started throbbing from a headache, a tender bruise and a bandage atop of it. It painfully reminded her of the start of the whole ordeal. Though the open doorway, she saw long halls with many other doors and lines of metal storages on either side. On a banner, long, decrepit, but still hanging from the ceiling, whose only legible words were high school. There were broken floors and tons of refuse lining the halls, crumbled walls and broken ceiling, leaving only one real path through, which, of course, she followed. She heard the quiet tinking of tools in one of the rooms with an open door, and as she approached, she very quietly peeked in. There was quite a setup of things here, large workbench topped with glass vials and containers, an electric burning glowing red hot ass pan. Atop it oozed with a silver liquid. A few big cases with spray paint markings on them of codes, a few guns adorning the walls, and the maker of the noises at the far workbench, seated at a table as the gun that she remembers in his hands being cleaned slowly. Silence for the first moment. "Good morning," Rhada spoke from beyond his desk, before turning to face her. Everything about him was as normal as the first time she saw him, totally human. She saw what lurked beneath his cool human exterior though, and she could only watch him with the same look, almost as if she could still see it in him. "Did you get any sleep? You practically passed out on me," Rhada chuckled. She would have laughed. It would have been funny, she said to herself, but she couldn't even force a syllable. Rhada looked to the ground, clearing his throat, as he tried to remove the foot from his mouth, then looked to the side, spying a few paper bags sitting on the shelf to his side. "Would you like some breakfast at least?" Her stomach reached up from its sunken cold to hit her with a wicked hunger. She hasn't eaten since lunch yesterday. A loud growl of her stomach confirmed that. "Have a seat," Rhada said. Pulling a stool up to the workbench, she slowly moved to the chair and sat down, seeing what the bags had stamped on them. MRE, not for resale. "Sorry, I don't have much flavours left. There's only so much. Take whichever you want," Rhada offered, finding his own bag and starting to eat. Breakfast was very quiet, even more quiet than the taut stress in Madison's eyes as she hardly took her gaze off him, as if watching him kept the world in check. Rhada was fully aware of her attention. He could feel her gaze burning a hole through him, but tried to quietly eat his meal and keep everything from getting awkward. But it wasn't working. Eventually, he had to say something to her. "Okay, I know that last night was, well, unbelievable, so I'm going to answer your first few questions before you ask. First, yes, last night did happen. No, you're not dead, and yes, the entree is horrible. Just dig down a bit and there should be a candy bar in there somewhere," Rhada lists, before taking another bite. "What are you?" Madison manages to blurt out. It was a loud stumble of a thought that simply spilled out, but Madison didn't attempt to recoup from it. The room fell, even more silent than before. "Well," Rhada started, as he placed his food bag back up on the shelf, getting more comfortable in his seat. "That's kind of a long story. Not one I'm sure you want to hear." "You're one of those things," Madison responded. "That's a vague way of putting it, but yes, I am," Rhada admitted, trying to stay as objective as he could. "So all of the monsters in the world, I happen to run into the one with a conscience? Why did you even save me?" Madison asked coldly. "Believe me, that when I say I've seen enough death in my lifetime, I mean it," Rhada responded just as coldly. "I used to be in the military, when the world was still the world. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be so rude. It's just that ever since I was born, I've heard stories about the monsters and nothing really else. It's hard to imagine one of them going out of their way to save me." Madison explained, her eyes watering up a bit. "Don't worry, I don't blame you. How old are you?" Rhada asked, lowering his guard a bit. 19, Madison responded. "Ah, that's it. You wouldn't nearly be old enough even to know then, the way the world was before," Rhada realised. "Only what I've heard from my parents before they..." Madison trailed off. "I see. I'm sorry," Rhada consoled. "So, Madison installed, trying to change the subject. "I suppose I should ask, how did this happen to you? Or..." Madison skipped around the direct question as best she could, but considering what she knew as fact, was suddenly skewed by the fact that one of the monsters of her childhood was indeed sitting right in front of her, sharing breakfast. She was understandably curious. "Like I said, it's a long story. I don't want to burden you," Rhada avoided. "Please, I want to know. You said you were in the military. Like the army?" Madison asked, trying to perk herself up a bit. The situation may have been taxed, but it was calm right now. There was no obvious need to worry. Rhada smiled, a half smile, and stood. His right foot stomped, and his right hand came up in a brisk salute, before he sprouted, "Lieutenant First Class Rhada Mason, U.S. Army Rangers, 144th Armoured, at your service." Madison smiled and chuckled a bit at the sudden salute. He chuckled and almost blushed, if it weren't for his cool exterior still holding out. Eventually, he sank back into his seat and smile fading into a forlorn look as memories came rushing back to him. "That's the very first time I've saluted in almost 20 years. Things like that fall by the wayside when things like running water fall apart. How old are you? Madison asked back to him. I'm old enough not to have to answer, he chuckled. Okay, so what were the Army Rangers like? Madison asks. They were my brothers. They were my brothers in arms, long ago, armed kindred spirits. It was closer than family sometimes. We lived and died together. I made a promise to them that I would find a way to avenge them, by joining them when my time had come. Rhada remembered almost painfully of the promise he had made. That's what he meant by last night. A year before the cataclysm, I was stationed overseas with a small group making up my squad mates, my brothers. We were on patrol when we were intercepted some intel that an IED, improvised explosive device, factory was located in the basement of a hotel nearby. The operation received the green light. We staked the building out and went in to make our move. We did everything right, and we thought we would get the drop on them without even firing a shot. But it didn't work out quite as planned. Rhada reminisced. Chapter 3. 20 years ago. The colours of the town's dusty streets would have blurred into the sandy landscape with a little bit of wind, but you couldn't afford to keep your eyes unfocused for more than a few moments, especially out here, especially now. The block-to-block warring had long since ceased here, but that didn't stop the car bombers, the weapon shippers, the real scum, keeping the blood flowing onto the dirt. So that's why we were there, to keep the peace and to weed out any undesirables. Rhada and a squad of 3 similarly armed and armoured soldiers strolled down one of the small market town dusty streets, eyes peeled to the horizons and corners as the local people did their daily trading and tried to live life as if no one was there to hurt them. But any soldier knew that whether the locals were looking at you or not, they were watching you, and who could blame them? Armed men deserve a little more careful attention, despite their intentions. They were just there to keep the peace. But the peace, in all its glory, was but a thin layer on top of what was really going on. A smooth, pretty tarp over the bodies and the bullets. Rhada, you spacing off? Captain Murphy asked loudly. It startled Rhada's mind, but his exterior remained cool and calm. No, sir, Skipper, Rhada responded, turning to him. He's getting bored. Cuddy, a long-time private in the group, asked, bumping shoulders with Jackson, who was to his left. Cuddy was his nickname, what we all called him to get a rise out of him. It was a short for McGingledy, a poke that at the fact that he was Irish by birth. He even had the accent to boot. His real name was McLaughlin. I can't really blame him, Skipper. I know what we're doing here. Important. I suppose we're rangers. Should we really be babysitting these people? Jackson asked as the group turned to form an open circle. Jackson was a bit of a hothead, always looking to get in on the real save the world action type stuff. He was never made for patrol or peacekeeping. He was usually the man behind the M249 saw when worst came to worst. You're not protecting them, you're protecting the dumbasses who want to try and kill them. Believe me, if these people wanted us gone right now, bad enough, we wouldn't be here, Murphy responded. Murphy was without a doubt one of the best leaders the Rangers had ever seen. He toured all over the Middle East before it was the Middle East as we knew it. Hell, he'd probably seen it before most of us knew what country we were in. He was a hell of a man to work for, and an honour to work with. Yeah, we get the numbers and patriotism thing. That's not what I think he means though. Isn't this more like fresh out of camp shit? Rangers lead the way, right? Jackson asked. Grin and bear it, Jackie. Things here aren't falling apart, but with everything pulling out, you never know what the jackass in the box is going to pop out to kick you in the arse, Murphy said, with that stern demeanour we all came to know well. That was the end of the conversation, for sure. Delta 4-1, this is Overwatch coming. 4 chest-mounted radios squawked in unison. Go for Delta 4-1, Murphy responded in his usual no-nonsense sort of voice. He was always like that, an ice cube on the outside. We always joked that on leave he would probably just wait around till everyone got back, field stripping and cleaning his weapons. Delta 4-1, we received local intel of possible IDE target. Orders are to secure site and wait for disposal team sentry to make its way to you. The radio squawked, loud enough for everyone to hear clearly, and of course, couldn't just be a nice day. Cuddy sighed, shaking his head. Murphy waved an angry hand at him before continuing on the radio. 10-4, Overwatch. Orders received and understood. Where's the location? Murphy asked. Delta 4-1, location is Bravio Hotel, approximately 2k west from your current position. The radio responded. Naturally, the only building in this tiny town more than 2 stories high, the hotel was a relic from before the war was tearing through their streets. It was only partially in tatters though. Lots of civilians still called this home. So, no matter what was actually happening here, it couldn't be good. It only took them a little while to cover that distance, all the while working themselves back into that war front mental scenario. First order of business, get whatever there were for civilians out. Second, secure the site. Third, try to find that device if there was one. Even just before we had reached the front door, Murphy was working out the plan and handing out orders. Cuddy, top floor. Jackson, second. Clear out the civvies. Rhada, on me. First floor, then basement. Double time. Murphy barked as we unlocked safeties, stilled our wheels, and moved through the front door like the devil himself was behind us. I can remember that day being wicked hot, like usual. My gloves were slick, my rifle was heavy in my hands. I remember giving the counter guy the business, telling them all to get out. We didn't have a translator, but an American uniform, a shout, and a finger pointing outside was good enough for most folk. The first floor didn't have much for rooms, big empty hallways, and a few big rooms, including the staircase down. Rhada and Murphy stacked on the staircase, weapons drawn and shouldered, ready for anything. Well, we thought we were ready for anything. It certainly felt that way. Sarge and me jolted down those stairs like we were falling upright, and by the time we hit that bottom step, we found out what we had stumbled in on. Present day. Rhada started, sliding out of his reminiscence with a bit of a stumble. We got to the bottom of the stair, stacked on the door, then breached, but they were ready for us. Rhada recalled Murphy kicking the door to splinters, the two of them just charging through the door with barrels up, the group of men on the far side of the deep cement basement, the dozens of suitcases, chemistry sets, weapons, and random things crammed in the cache of a basement. The next thing that comes to mind is Murphy saved my life. He saw the bombers before I did and managed to turn back and push me down. I fell on the inside of the stair room and I remember hearing this earth-shattering blast, this shake in the ground. I felt rubble falling on me. I tried to get up, but I got pinned. The rumbling and crashing went on and on for a while. I couldn't move. I felt crushed under all the rubble. I just wanted to know that my guys were okay, that they weren't hurt in the blast. But I eventually passed out, Rhada said. So what happened? Madison asked, after taking a sip of water bottle from her ration. I came to in a hospital. Doctors say it was 3 days later. It felt like 100 years. All I kept asking is if my squad mates were alive. No one would answer. Then the sergeant major comes by to hand me my purple heart, tells me that I was indeed the only one that survived the operation. Jackson and Cuddy were still in the upper floors, the hotel basement was obliterated, and the building collapsed. Murphy was killed instantly by shrapnel from the blast. The only part of the building left totally intact was the stairwell, where I had been pushed into. I didn't exactly come away without a scratch. 3 broken ribs, a cracked femur, dislocated shoulder and hip, and severe concussion. But I was the only one who lived. After that, well, the story gets a little sadder, and I'm not proud of it. Rhada almost spitted the words at himself, mainly. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked, Madison apologised. No, it's alright, it's just... I haven't ever told anyone else this story. It's different, Rhada admitted. After I got my Purple Heart, That's a badge, right? Madison asked. Yeah, it's a medal given to soldiers wounded in the line of duty who aren't fit to serve anymore, Rhada explained. After I got hit, I was shipped to the base hospital for just about a year to recoup, but I was having psychological issues. I have a deep problem with the fact that I was the only one left alive. I felt almost left behind somehow. It was a lot worse for me then, when the pain was fresh. I tried to commit suicide once, but obviously failed, Rhada admitted with a twinge of pain at the memory. Oh, God, Madison whispered. After that, I was shipped stateside and wheeled off to Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder Institution of California, a pasty white place that helps soldiers deal with the stress of broken souls and minds due to battle. I was there for a while before... Rhada trailed off again. Before what? Madison asked. Before the Armageddon, Rhada finished. Wow. Hope you guys are enjoying this series. Absolutely fantastic story. Very excited to present this one on the channel. Please do let me know what you think, guys, in the comments down below. Of course, please do share and like. Your support is absolutely amazing. I can't thank you guys enough. And the comments have been wonderful, guys. You really have touched me. I'm very humbled in the last few days. Just such a great little family here at DMT. So thank you again. Have a wonderful evening or day. And remember, guys, be safe, not sorry.